This is Seahawks Stories, 50th Season Edition, presented by Emerald City Athletics.
50th Season Edition, we are taking you through the best players in franchise history, position group by position group, and we're pulling back the curtain on some of the stories that you might not have heard before. I'm your host, Jen Mueller, joined today by Dave Boling, longtime beat writer for the Tacoma News-Tribune. Dave, how does it feel to be on the other side of this, on the hot seat, since you were normally the ones asking the questions?
I'm okay, I think.
I think,
you know,
very understated, low-key.
Well, you know, you and I have spent a lot of time on the sidelines together back when media guys used to be able to watch practices.
Yep.
So it's like just another chat with Jen on the sidelines.
I do love that. Maybe that's kind of the next iteration of this. Another chat with Jen on the sidelines. We'll mark that.
And you can
for
teach me how to
possible
cook.
Use.
Yeah, give me some, you know.
Yeah.
I can't do poached eggs.
Okay. Well, we'll work on that. We'll come up
they
with
really
an episode.
vex me.
They vex you. You know what I think vexes a lot of people, though, is offensive line and evaluating offensive line. And before we get into some of the greatest offensive linemen, and the Seahawks have had some really good ones over the years, it always amazed me that you were the one that was standing watching the offensive linemen. And it took me years to realize you were a former offensive lineman.
Well, I was undersized, and so one of the things that you get when you're an undersized college lineman is you get knocked on your ass a lot. You actually physically, people say, oh, I've been knocked down a lot in life. I really have, literally.
Right.
And and what is a characteristic of all these guys, even the great talents, offensive linemen are playing against better athletes on the defensive line almost exclusively. And when they're starting out, they get beat. And you learn you have no choices. You can't dig a hole in the field to hide in. You got to come back the next play, wipe the blood out of your nose, and find a way to beat the guy. And that's why I think offensive linemen tend to be kind of, they're fun guys. They have a good perspective. They understand. They're great teammates. Generally, they understand helping each other. It's really a well-coordinated group when they are good. And you get your ass kicked, you get up and you do it again and find a way to win. And I think that's one of the characteristics that make watching offensive lines come together, grow, ripen, mature over time to become a really forceful unit.
You talk about them being a fun group. I'm going to be honest, Dave. I think I have some differing opinions on this. And I have loved all the guys I've covered, but I think back to when I first started being around the team. I'm thinking Robbie Tobeck, Steve Hutchinson, and while I know they were fun-loving as a group, you know what they were not fun to do? Talk to in interviews.
Robbie Tobeck may be the best
Robbie Tobeck
Seahawk
is funny.
Ever. Maybe the best ever to sit and talk to, and maybe he wasn't as loose.
Maybe I hadn't built that relationship.
Part of the time you have to, they have to grow. You have to earn their trust. But
they had like their own inner workings, like inside jokes. Like I remember an interview where I'm trying to get those guys to talk, and the only thing they did was quote movie lines over and over and over again. And I couldn't figure out if I was the butt of the joke or if they did that to everybody. Come to find out, that's kind of what they did to everybody.
Walter was not a voluble individual. Walter Jones, to everybody, he was great with his teammates and whatever. But even them, I remember one time somebody came through. It was a young guy, a young player coming through and said, "Hey, did you talk to that? Have you met so and so?" He says, "No, I know everybody I need to know." and that's kind of how Walter was, and it's so wonderful to see him now. I think when he retired, he said something like this: "Last you'll see me, I'm going to be in Alabama, and you'll never see me again." And he's part of the community, and he's fun. He's a fun interview, and he's involved in things that require him to communicate, and he's great at it. But yeah, I wouldn't agree with you on that group. Basically, because Robbie Tobeck was such an interview star, I had trouble to go to somebody else because I know he was going to give me a money quote.
It's true.
And the relationship centers and quarterbacks are always close. There's a physical thing, obvious. We don't need to go into that. But quarterbacks and centers really are best friends a lot of times. And Hasselbeck and Toback, and I think Toback had it with Bledsoe too at WSU, pranks on each other and do goofy stuff, and always real tight.
Okay, so if Robbie Toback was your number one interview, before we
Certainly
get into
one of them,
before we get into physical traits
Yeah.
of offensive linemen, your top 5 offensive linemen to interview.
Yeah, Robbie was good. The rest of the line, Chris Gray was fun because he was a bulldog.
Yes.
Bless his heart, he did not have the talent that some of the others on that line had. And but Chris was from the South. He was tough. He was tougher than tree bark, and he would come out within 2 days of the start of training camp. His nose would be bloodied, and every time he'd walk off the field, there would be blood just dripping down his face. And from the end of July to January, he had a bloody forehead and nose. And that's what he did. That was his job. He stuck his face in somebody else's sternum, and he did it relentlessly. And sometimes he would get beat, and you would see him, you'd swear he was on his back, rolling over, trying to bite the calf of a defensive tackle as he was going past. Tenacious and
strong.
Always in there.
Yes.
And always in there. And, he was not the best of interviews, but boy, you get to see these people and you watch them and what they go through and what they put into the game and how much they devote themselves to it. We're objective. You got to be objective with the team. You're not pulling for anything. You kind of pull for guys that you just admire.
Sure.
And a lot of those guys were people I really respected. And then you go in, and it makes it hard. You go in after a game. I don't know how you can do it. I don't have the heart to say, why'd you guys lose today? Or what was the, it's really hard.
It's a very different conversation.
And you don't want to be the person who makes them try to, especially after they're exhausted, they got bones sticking out sometimes. And then you got to ask tough questions about this was a loss and they beat you and this and that. And sometimes I'll just kind of bail on that, and I'll just go to the back and
just like I'm not doing that today.
As a columnist, which I was 20 some years at the News Tribune, I didn't have to cover it like a beat.
Right.
So I could describe. I could get 4 graphs describing the disconsolate look and the blood and the bones and all of that sort of thing, and to be a little more sympathetic and a little less sanguine with the questions. But there's been a lot through the years. Max Unger was a very intelligent guy, probably the best center they've ever had. He was an All-Pro on a great team. Was vastly missed. In his absence, and he was really good. You go way back, and I'll go back, and I see on our list Edwin Pearl Bailey. We called him Pearl. People now wouldn't know who Pearl Bailey is, but when I talked with John Nordstrom at some length, and of the first ownership group and managing general partner and grandfather to the franchise, really. And John said Edwin was one of his favorite players when they had the old headquarters. He would take a bus to the headquarters, a city bus, and bring his own lunch. He packed a brown bag for lunch, and he's an old Southern guy.
Yeah.
And he had no pretense. I don't know if he owned a car, but he would take a bus.
Take the bus.
And it's certainly, I have to guess that was the last person who's ever brown bagged it
to the facility.
To the facility.
Or maybe taking a bus to the facility.
And he was a great player, and he was an awful fun guy as well.
We are broadcasting from the Seahawks podcast studio presented by Sony, the official headphones partner of the Seattle Seahawks. We have asked Dave Boling about his favorite offensive lineman to interview. What about your favorite player when you would stand and watch practice? I mean, I have a guess, but it might just be too obvious. Who was your favorite offensive lineman to watch technique on and just to watch their day-to-day?
You know, Walter is the one you would say, obviously. Walter was so gifted physically that the technical part of it was secondary. He had the feet of a dancer. He had the hands of Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
You just get him on you and you were stuck. And I think his greatness, it was fun to watch, but only when there was really somebody who was playing against him. First day, Chad Brown told me this story, 3-time Pro Bowl linebacker. Probably should have worked his way into the Hall of Fame. I mean, he was on that trajectory. I don't think the Seahawks used him that well. Spectacular. Come from the Steelers. And the year before he got here, he had one game where he was going against Tony Baselli, all-pro tackle, gold standard of the day. And he beat him 3 times on the same move for a sack, or maybe 2 sacks in a hurry. An unbelievable thing. That's why the Seahawks paid all the money to get him. He shows up. Walter Jones held out as a rookie. So it was at some point later in the camp. And pass protect, individual pass pro, first day Walter's in there. Rookie, they line up Chad Brown across from him to obviously see what this kid's got. Chad tells me that he had that one move, and it was an inside out and kind of juke, and he was very quick. He was going to let the rookie know, you know, you got some things to learn. Welcome to the NFL, pal. And Chad said he got stonewalled twice in a row and made nothing. Walter got his hands on him, and he got nothing. That was it.
That is, by the way, my favorite drill to watch. It's everybody's favorite drill to watch. It's the pass pro, and just to see what those guys can do.
Max Unger had another one that was great. He and Brandon Mebane used to go at it all the time. And Brandon, as you know, I used to kind of kid him. I thought he was built like a weeble. You know, he's got that low center of gravity. Yes. You couldn't knock him down. And he was, I think, kind of one of the unsung heroes of the Legion of Boom. With all those big personalities, he was just a guy who went in there and he gobbled up blockers and did his job and didn't ask for attention, you know, and he didn't get it. He was fine. Well, when he and Max would go against each other, then usually they do 1 or 2. After a while, they were, you know, well regarded. They didn't need all the work. But I did a column about it, asking Brandon, how does Max Unger make you better, and asking Max, how does Brandon make you better? And it was a real interesting, obvious, great respect.
Yep. And
but still, yeah, sure, I want to beat him, you know.
Yeah.
And but that was another one that you could see the real greatness of Max Unger brought out by Brandon Mebane.
You know, the point that you mentioned, though, that I think gets probably not talked about at all. I was going to say undersaid. That's actually not a word. I can find better words than that. What doesn't get talked about is you can talk about the offensive line working together on their own, and those guys work their tails off. But there's also the measure of the level of defensive players they practice against every day. It's the iron sharpening iron. So you can't just look at that position group as just an offensive unit, because the Seahawks have benefited from some really good defensive fronts.
Michael Bennett.
That's the one I was thinking of.
In that
yes.
setting. And again, it was, how did he define himself against the best players? Well, I never really did chart the fights.
I was going to say there were a number.
And the fracases. But Breno Giacomini at right tackle.
Oh, my gosh.
And he was a Louisville guy, so I'm kind of a fellow alum, and he's twice my size, but,
yep.
you know, over 50 years, things change.
Yep.
But he, you know, there are a lot of teams that could have used, subsequent Seahawks teams could have really used him. And he had some penalties, and he had some breakdowns, But, man, that dude was tough. And he's not taking anything. And Michael Bennett is a scary dude. When he gets the samurai eyes, oh, man, watch out. And he might get held up a little bit, and he's coming back the next one, and the fists are flying, and he's getting in there no matter what. Well, those two really had some bouts, and that's what you want in a right tackle. Chris Terry was an earlier right tackle who was really great. Just a tough guy is going to maybe he doesn't have the feet and the hands of a left tackle, but he does what he has to do.
I would also point out, it wasn't just the fact that they had spirited practices against each other. You walked off the field and they were friends in the locker room. I want to make sure that we're not mischaracterizing these guys as just kind of out there, although I've never heard samurai eyes before. That one's new. But that is a very accurate description.
When you see it, it's like they're bulging and red lines and the veins in the face.
It's the intensity that just ratchets up.
And then when you got Cliff Averill on the other side,
right.
That
entire
Bennett
group.
and Averill were such close friends.
Yes.
That when they got together, they were.
They didn't
really
start off as close.
No. They always thought
this
is guy. We're going to have problems, and then they turned into and. You look at the Super Bowl they lost, Bennett was just unbelievable, and you could really tell Cliff's influence once he got hurt, and I think that maybe more than the play call at the end made the difference in the game.
Absolutely agreed. This NFL season, feel every play, every hit, every moment with the Sony 1000 XM5 noise-canceling headphones, the official headphones of the Seattle Seahawks. With premium noise cancellation, you are in the zone. No distractions, just pure football. Whether you are in your living room or on the go, you'll never miss a beat with Sony headphones. Now, we have transitioned into the more recent versions of the offensive line, but let's go back to 2005. The Seahawks' first trip to the Super Bowl. The left side of that line, it's unequivocally the best in franchise history, right?
Maybe football history, maybe NFL. And I want to be sure when we talk of the left side, we include the center, because Hutch and Walter Jones, Hall of
Famers.
Robbie kind of held that group together. I think he was a veteran force. He calmed everybody down. He always had everybody laughing. They'd get in a huddle. He would crack a joke at Hasselbeck. It might be a critical time in the game. Everybody's tight. He could break up the group. And then Chris Gray, of course, was very complimentary in that. But you watch some of the great plays. Like one of the ones that you always see a highlight of Walter is coming out in the championship game against Carolina, where he blocks some schmo 30 yards into the end zone. Sensational. Hutch comes in, he's cutting pursuit. But to make that play work, Robbie had to do an A-gap reach on the play side defensive tackle. That's a tough block to make at any level in the NFL. That's a guy who could come in and change the back's route. So that's another example. Okay, we all look at Walter's performance on that one, and it's spectacular. He's such an athlete. But it's how you can have four guys do a great job, and if one guy botches it, the play is shot.
Well, and I think some of that also goes to those guys could read each other's minds. They played together so long. They had so many reps. Are we going to see that across the league ever again? And I mean for an extended period of time. There are certainly teams that invest in the offensive line, but the way the league is going, will we ever see that?
I couldn't predict what it is, and I'm, now I look at college football is even less structured, and part of that is, are people going to? The greatest athletes, and I had a good talk with Howard Mudd about this, one of the great line coaches and linemen in the league, and he was a real fixture here and really helped Walter become a pro, and I asked him why there aren't enough good offensive linemen to go around. So when you start drafting and you make a mistake, it hurts you for a generation. or somebody gets hurt or something else and it doesn't work out, it's a real problem because you just can't go find them. They're not making them. And part of it, according to Howard, was, first of all, if a talented young big guy is coming up, he wants to play where he's going to make the most money, get sacks.
Right, you're going to switch over and play defense.
All the best athletes are going to play defense because that's when you can really use your physical advantage. And also, the college game has gone to spread offense, 3-step drops, quick reads, ball's gone, splits like 3 yards wide.
Yep.
It's a different game, and they don't have to hold the blocks as long. Their run blocks are always with angle leverage. It's a big difference. They're not learning. They're not preparing. Now, when they had the World League, that was something that they thought was a developmental league that really helped quarterbacks and offensive line.
Yeah.
And they don't have that now. And that's why I laugh at this skill position. And this is just
this is your former offensive lineman self would like to be in that group.
It's a sore point for me, and because you talk about taking on somebody like Von Mueller or half a dozen of these new guys, you've got to be real skilled.
Yes. While you're moving backwards most of the time. You would like to be moving forward. Often you're moving backwards.
That's a tough technique,
yeah.
and a lot of that is your feet, your balance, and your setup, and those are the things you could watch and learn when you see guys in practice, and then how people you can't do it.
You could watch and learn. I could just look and be like, that looks really cool, and I couldn't do that, but I couldn't tell you what was right or wrong about that. You could watch that.
Walter Jones, they step back, you look at his balance. You could drive a truck into him.
I'm pretty sure people try.
And it wouldn't knock him back. He had the sand. He had the lower body leverage and then the great hands. And it was just a joy. It was perfect. You can know when somebody's getting beat and not ready for it if you see them cross their feet trying to catch up. Walter never changed his.
He was never grapevining his feet. Yeah.
And he'd get that outside shoulder, and once he did that, dead. Door closed. So that was a lot of fun. And they're just not making.
It's true. They do not.
They're very rare.
Quite like that.
There are some, and there's great linemen, and they're coming in and they're earning their money.
What do you make? This is my last question for you, as we're talking to Dave Boling here, longtime writer, columnist for the Tacoma News-Tribune, has watched thousands of hours of Seahawks practice, done thousands of interviews.
Since 1989.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah, it's crazy.
5 decades.
Like the amount of knowledge that you have.
Yeah, I wouldn't sell that too hard, but...
But we mentioned what Walter Jones went on to do after leaving the game. We see him on TV. He's in the community. When you think about what these guys did after they left football, does anything surprise you, or is it what you would have expected some of these big personalities, hardcore football guys to have done?
From a lineman aspect, no. Again, maybe I'm biased, but I tend to think they're a very intelligent group on the whole. They have the perspective of being somewhat less than pampered at all times. They are expected to do the dirty work and keep your mouth shut. And, if you dislocate a thumb, you kind of just grab it
back into place
and pop it back in. And those are the kind of people who can generally succeed in whatever they do. I've been knocked on my ass. Give me another chance. I'll go in and do better. And I'm not surprised at anything that anything positive that these guys are capable of doing. Now, you get some bad advice maybe from somebody, or somebody tells you to invest in this and that. Maybe they trust people too much, but
they've done some pretty cool things.
But there's been...
That group has done some pretty cool things.
Yeah, and I think if you look around, a lot of offensive linemen have been successful in whatever they choose. Yeah. And I think it's a matter of determination and focus and capacity to sublimate your own ego for the good of whatever your unit is. And that's basically the definition of a good offensive lineman.
It also explains why they would at one point get fined for talking to members of the media too
Well,
much.
that was
which
a bad
is
era.
Why that made my job difficult.
That was a bad. That's a Alex Gibbs era.
It's okay. It's
No,
okay.
that was
I joke
no, that was
about it
awful.
now. I joke
No, it was
about
awful.
it now.
It was. Can I swear?
You can do whatever
That was.
you.
And when they would find guys, and they were, who was Ben Hamilton came in. Hey, you're good. We played for the guy in Denver, and so we can't talk and all that. I'm not trying to. Nobody's trying to.
Just trying to give you a
screw you.
voice
We're
to
trying
tell your
to.
story. It's okay.
Yeah, we got stories to tell. We got questions to ask. Just say, and the one thing, if you don't want to talk, just say,
That's right. That's it.
I'm not. Yeah, exactly. What does that
okay.
take? And I go, and again, as a columnist, I could make it up. He didn't want to talk, but he sure looked angry.
And he did. But you got some great stories out of them. We got some great stories out of you, Dave Boling. Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Seahawks Stories 50th season edition.
50 seasons, wow.
Love that.
It doesn't look that old, does it?
Not at all.
This franchise.
Not at all. It is a legendary franchise, legendary voice. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.